The season may almost be over, but the discussion rolls on, as it always does, on a weekly basis here on your favorite sports podcast, your favorite NFL-centric podcast on YouTube, Twitter. Actually, that's it. We might expand at a future date and time. When that'll be, we don't know. We're not the best planners on this show, which you can see it in the name because it is the Sports Agents of Chaos. Once again, back for another episode of the show, ladies and gentlemen, as we are now 1 week away. Well, a little over a week, technically, from the biggest game of the season, of course, the final game of the season happening. But before we get to that final game, which we will discuss more in detail next week, we are here to talk about what has led into it. The AFC and the NFC championship games happened in the NFL this past weekend. We're going to have plenty of breakdown analysis on that because I think the three of us have a lot to talk about. Speaking of the three of us, the usual troublesome triumvirate that is here to begin the episodes. Here's myself, Iceman Jurg, leading things in the proceedings, joined by my two compatriots, as always, on the bottom of the screen. The games master himself, looking like he's laying back after a long, hard graft of a day.
There's no chairs here. I'm back at my parents' house for the day, and I have to sit on a bed, so there's no chairs in my room.
I think you're the one winning here, technically, even though
I'm not complaining. I'm just saying this is why.
I still think you're the one winning here, Justin. Just getting to lay back and do the episode. It's a beautiful thing to be able to do. Although maybe the man on the top of the screen with me, we're going to call that the mini Taj Mahal is what's the working title for this Podfather? What do we got in the background here?
We have a nice aperitif vintage of pink limonada in my estate that I'm calling the Frank Lloyd Rick, if you will. So
the Podfather has done very well in the market recently, and
I have. I've in the words of Ric Flair, circa 2002, I bet on a winner last night. So there you go.
Rick had a secret crypto investment that finally hit big, and he's cashed out on it. Clearly, your place is so fancy, Rick. Our measly little, I mean, it's not a shock. I use Xfinity. Our Wi-Fi can't handle things here. Like, you're clipping off for us, so we're gonna have to upgrade. I guess, Justin, I think on our end we're gonna have to upgrade at some point so we can see the Podfather in full 1080p at some point here.
I heard him. He's clipping for you.
No, I'm talking about his background. The visuals are just so stunning. Our computers can't handle it. It's absolutely absurd.
The sound's coming through all right.
Yeah. The sound is good. The visual, I think, is just too much for the measly internet here to handle. But I mean, that's what happens when you use Xfinity Wireless in this case. So that being
afford the luxuries that the Podfather gets now.
Oh, one second, Emilio. Yes, the bush over there, please. Yes, thank you, Emilio. Very good.
So with that being said, let's move on to the proceedings of this episode. And guys, you know what the tagline of the show is at this point. Despite the fact we sometimes forget to say it at the intro, it is fun, football, and chaos. Let's start with a little bit of fun. And it's been a little bit since we got to have some fun because of the proceedings of the playoffs. But we're here to have a good old time once again. So, Podfather, get us back rolling. What is your mind-blowing fact of this week?
Okay, so this one is a little weird because it's kind of verified, but there's a little bit of like romantic license along with it. Sir Ian Fleming, the author of the James Bond series of novels, was once asked at one point, where did you come up with the name James Bond? And it turns out that the original name for James Bond was James Secretan, Secretan, for those of you that are spelling along at home. But what happened was he decided to switch the name because he saw a book, an ornithological book about birds. So everyone do the surfing bird right now. That the author was named James Bond. And he said to himself, that is the dullest name I've ever heard. That sounds like a great name for a spy series. So here's the poetic license about this part. James Bond was actually a real person, as you know from the book. And there was at one point an encounter that the real James Bond later on had with Sir Ian Fleming. Now, it's not really known what was said or what was, taking place, but just imagine that kind of Inception world where a guy writes about a man, a fake spy, a made-up spy named Bond, James Bond, takes it from a book that he saw, and then just so happens to, at some point in his life, on the planet Earth of, at that time, maybe 190 million and more people, find the gentleman named James Bond, and they actually have an interaction with each other, kind of like the Spider-Man pointing meme, like, you. So, it just proves to you that if you think that you're going to write about somebody and you pick the weirdest name you can think of, chances are there's somebody in the world who has that name that you're thinking of who might not be thrilled with that impersonation of them as the world's greatest spy, or in his case, a very bad ornithologist, bird doctor. So there you go. Like I said, it's a bit of a stretch, but there was a recorded interaction that I think was very interesting. So yes, the name James Bond comes from a real person, but from the furthest reach of spy to bird book author, basically. So there you go.
What a stretch that had to be for that name change to happen. Could you imagine if this entire time? I don't think it would have become as good of a franchise if it was James Secreton.
No, I don't think so. Yeah, I don't think so. It would not be as popular as it is today. Is it even popular today anymore? I mean, I don't even know.
And it's got a following still.
Yeah, it does. It does.
Well, I mean,
the funniest thing about all of it too is that if you think about the Bond movies, they're directed by people named Broccoli, which I think is just the best thing ever.
Well, the question: haven't they recasted who the new James Bond is already?
I've heard rumblings, but I don't think anything's been official yet. I know Aaron Taylor Johnson is kind of the front runner, but I don't know if that's been officially designated as him. Like I know there's still some people in the camp hoping for Idris Elba, to possibly come out and be the next Bond. Obviously Dwayne Johnson's not available in April because obviously. But there's I think I also saw Henry Cavill might have been a name they were considering at one point, but I mean I don't know. An American James Bond, I think they were doing it with Kingsman. It didn't quite work out the way they wanted it to, I think. But I don't know. We'll be the first ones to break it from my palatial estate, if you will. Yes.
For the eventual movie critics of Chaos podcast, that is going to be the offshoot here one of these days, or just media in general. Because I mean, as this time last year, Rick, when we following the championship games, we didn't have Justin. So what did the show descend into? Harry Potter.
Oh yeah. and you know what? I think the people are clamoring at this point. I'm hearing some murmurs that it's not fair that Rick and Jurg get to go off and do their own Harry Potter sequence when Justin's sitting there in his half-done Christmas sweater, and he needs to have a Pokemon podcast with Jurg when Rick's not here. It's just the way it has to be.
I don't really know if the people are clamoring for that, but we'll probably give it to them regardless at some point.
That's fair. That's fair.
Man. So once again, another outstanding, mind-blowing fact there, Rick. The Podfather always delivers. And speaking of delivering, this is one of the fan favorite segments of all time. The games, the NFL games by our games master. We have one this week, but it's always a good one. It is a Justin's Trivia.
Guys, so I was looking at coaching history, and it got me intrigued to think who were the best coaches of all time. But then I got to thinking, who was the worst coaches of all time in terms of winningest coaches per franchise? Can you guys tell me? There's 3 coaches with a losing record that happen to be the winningest coaches for their franchise in their franchise history. Can you guys tell me who they are and what teams?
They have a losing record?
The winningest coach in the franchise, in the history of that franchise,
has a losing record.
Has a losing record. And you don't have Sandoval to Google this one. This is a hard one.
Hey, Sandoval Bings and Billy would use Lycos or S. Jeeves or, Magellan or whatever.
No, but this actually took research. I had to look up each individual team's winningest head coach and find this. This wasn't a pre-made trivia question.
So Jurg, let me spin something at you just to kind of see what you think at this point. Are we looking at expansion teams, do you think?
I think that's definitely in the conversation, but then when we think of the expansion teams, which I think we're going to come to mind of the 2 most recent ones, which, I mean, it's still at this point has to be the Texans and the Panthers, or at least close to it, if I'm not mistaken.
Jaguars too, I think, no?
Who were the Jaguars before or after the Panthers?
Jaguars and Panthers came in the same year.
Same year. So if we look at those 3, so let's just hit those 3 first because they're the 3 most recent. So that's like kind of like the least amount of headway compared to the rest of these franchises.
Accurate.
You have the Texans who would be the first coach to come to your mind when it comes to the Texans in their time? It'd be Gary Kubiak for me.
Okay.
So you have to think, if he has the most wins in franchise history, did he have a below 500 record in Houston to finish off his tenure? He did lead them in the stretch of years, what was it, 3-4 years in a row where they made the postseason. Now, they weren't necessarily like at that point, like a 12-4 or like a 13-3, but they had some good years. But then at the end of his time there, and then at the very beginning when he got there, what we have to ask, was that enough to kind of hold him down records wise from being just below 500, but still being the best coach in that franchise's history?
Okay.
Because I think for as long as he was there, I don't think Bill O'Brien surpassed Gary Kubiak in career wins. I don't think.
I don't believe so. Yeah, because I mean, my first thought about all this was Don Capers.
Mm-hmm.
You know, but then thinking about his Texans history, he didn't really do that great, but was 18 wins, you know, still enough? Because they've had a tumultuous history since. But you're right, there have been some 11-win seasons under Kubiak, and I think O'Brien's had some better history. I thought about Carolina, but then John Fox popped into my head.
So and Ron Rivera.
Ron Rivera. That's true. That's true. So then who else would it be?
Would we take out the Jaguars? Because I don't think who would the Jaguars all-time leader be? Would it be Coughlin?
Yeah.
And I don't think he would have been. I don't think he had a losing record in Jacksonville, did he? Or
no, but you know what? You know what though? I mean, what about Jack Del Rio? Because Jack Del Rio was there for a while, and I know that he had some losing seasons.
Right.
Coughlin, I know, had the but here's the thing. Coughlin, I think, is buoyed by those 2 really good years he had when they went to the AFC title game twice. But the rest of the time, Jacksonville wasn't really that good.
Right.
The other name that I'm thinking of is, and I know this is a risky name to mention, but Detroit. I know they've been in the NFL for so long, but can you tell me any of their head coaches that have had marginal success at any point in time? I mean, the guy that's getting a lot of run right now is the guy who was the coach when they were in the NFC title game back in '91, Wayne Fontes.
That might not be a bad shout, because honestly, he might have the most wins there, but still be below 500.
Justin, I'll log in first with Wayne Fontes.
Wayne Fontes for the Detroit Lions was 66-67, the winningest head coach in Detroit Lions history. That's one of the 3 names.
Okay.
That's impressive.
66-67. Yikes. Well, again, I mean that's buoyed by recent history, because obviously, you know, the guy came back to light more now with the Lions making it to the title game back from 2091. So that kind of made sense to the name. Go ahead,
Rick. I'm hitting back to the point you made about Del Rio. He was there longer than Coughlin, right? So do you think that even if like you said, maybe those 2 years for Coughlin where it was buoyed for them, do you think that Del Rio's very slight tenure, maybe I'm misremembering, but at least in my mind, if I had to guess, I think Del Rio was there longer than Coughlin, even if it was only by a bit. Do you think Del Rio had that extra time to where he could have surpassed Coughlin?
I think so. I think he surpassed them both in wins and losses. And I feel like this is a running joke, because I feel like I may have read this somewhere, but I don't remember, that the guy who will take the winningest head coach mantle in Jacksonville, when they do that, will have to win a very nice number of games in order to do so. So I feel like Del Rio is probably a good shout here if you want to run with that.
Yeah, I'll run with that as my first guess. So Jack Del Rio, Justin, for the Jacksonville Jaguars.
Jack Del Rio is not on my list. I don't believe he's the winningest head coach. I think from my research, it was Coughlin.
Oh, wow.
Huh.
Somebody fact check that.
Yeah, seriously. Yep.
Right now, it is. So yeah, Coughlin is the winningest head coach in franchise history. He was 72-64.
Is that counting playoffs?
I don't believe so. Let's see.
Look at that. Poor Jack. He can't even get that.
Yeah.
Jack Del Rio can't even get that. Oh, man.
Quite unfortunate.
He was there for so long.
I know.
He was there for so long. Okay. Rick, what do you think about the modern era Browns?
Oh.
Now it's just us trying to guess who was there the longest to get wins.
You know what though? I feel like the No, I feel like if you talk about the Browns, you loop in the old school Browns as well.
You think so? I thought
think
Baltimore
so.
took that history.
They might have, but I don't know. Some lists are very, very, very odd with that. Because again, even if Baltimore took that history, John Harbaugh is probably still the guy.
Mm.
And I think if you're talking about the new era Browns, I think Kevin Stefanski, he's had what, 2 11-win seasons, 2 double-digit win seasons now. I think he's probably head and shoulders above the rest.
Yeah, probably.
Was it going to be Romeo Crennel or Hugh Jackson? Like, come on. Justin, I'm going to hit you where it hurts. Weeb Eubank, New York Jets.
There you go. I was waiting for you guys. I told you. I gave you the hint. I was looking at horrible head coaches, and I looked at my history, and Weeb Eubank for the New York Jets, the winningest coach in New York Jets history, is 71, 77, and 6.
Which is funny. If those 6 games, the ties were wins, he'd be at 500.
Yep.
Mediocrity at its finest. That would be
you gotta love it. You've got to love it.
Okay, so we have the Jets. Yeah. Okay. It's getting me thinking. This is getting me thinking. I keep going back to the expansion teams, but I'm trying to think if there's like another team that could get. Rick, just as a team, food for thought. The Cardinals. Because they've been around for so long. Can you think of a single like coach that was there for a sustained period of time that would have had like 10 wins, 10 wins, 10 wins, and then only like 1 or 2 3-win seasons, and then that's what ousted them? Like,
no, but I can tell you that I know of a coach who had consistently done a good enough job with them, Bruce Arians.
Right. But do you think he's is he the all-time wins leader for Arizona?
Well, so here's the thing about that. I believe so because when they were in St. Louis and Chicago, they didn't have the modicum of success that they had in Arizona. Like Arians got them to the playoffs multiple times,
right,
in Arizona, and even if it's not him, Wisenhunt got them to a Super Bowl, so I'm sure he had some pretty decent stats. I mean, yeah. So I feel like Arians is the guy, is the answer for that one.
And yeah, he definitely wouldn't have below 500.
What about Atlanta? Mike Smith.
Whew.
He was there for a very long time.
And he saw both winning and losing seasons.
Yeah. And
he wasn't the coach to make it to the Super Bowl. That was Dan Quinn's team, right?
Correct. That was Dan Quinn's team, yeah. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I'm trying to think if there's anybody else that we missed here. I mean, Kubiak's not a bad shout because he was there for a pretty long period of time too.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
I'm just trying to think. Like, did his losing seasons outweigh his winning ones to where he's still the Texans' all-time leader, but those losing seasons took him below. You know what I mean? Like, that's the only thing I'm questioning.
Well, also, how long was he the head coach of the Texans for?
When did they get rid of him? Like, it was like early 2010s when they get rid of him. So the only question is, did he? Like, how long? Because was it Capers and then Kubiak? There wasn't a coach between them, right?
I believe so. Yeah, they started in 2002, so I believe so.
And how long was Capers the coach for? So what, 3-4 seasons?
He was lucky to get 4. I think it was 3.
So if it's maybe this is the context, right? If we take Kubiak, and while he had the successful years, if he got fired, that means he had to have had a bad final season. So let's assume it was just a bad final year, like what, like 5-11, maybe 6 or 10.
Probably, yeah, something like that. Yeah,
they had a couple good years, but he then had to. If you think of the start of his career, he had to take over that expansion team that still had to build. So,
well, and he also, not only did he have playoff, remember they won. They
Yeah.
won their division. They hosted playoff games. So the guy who gets you your first and I think first and second playoff home game, I think is worth something. If I recall, I think he was fired mid-season. I think Wade Phillips finished out this last year in 2013. I think. So
I'll use that for my second guess, and we'll get one more after it. So Gary Kubiak, Justin, for the Houston Texans.
Kubiak for the Houston Texans went 61-64. He is the third answer. You guys killed it.
there you go. There you go.
Thank you, expansion teams.
All right then.
Yeah, because the big thing was when we think back to the start of his career, he had to take over those bad Texans teams. Like they had a lot of ground to cover. It was not smooth sailing. And honestly, Rick, this is on me because the thing I forget, like that slipped my mind when we talked about Kubiak. Peyton Manning was running that division for like the first 5 years.
No question.
Of course, the Colts were just roughshotting the Texans every single time.
Yeah. Look, I mean, if it wasn't, because I mean, look, who else was on that division? Jacksonville and Tennessee. Tennessee. I mean, at that point, like the mid 2000s, they were at the end of Steve McNair and the beginning of Vince Young.
And Kerry Collins, his spell there.
Oh yes, Kerry Collins. Can't forget him.
It's like the Titans and the Jaguars were basically trying to take turns of who would be second in that division for a few years.
And they were like so far back, too. It was like the division was wrapped up by like week 10, in those cases with Manning there. So yeah, that's.
We talk a lot about Brady and like how bad the AFC East was for him to win all his divisions. Peyton didn't have the strongest of divisions there, to say the very least either.
He did not. He most certainly did not. And why did Houston win those divisions? Was he already gone by that point, or no? He was still there.
I had to. Well, remember the season before they got Andrew Luck, that was the whole neck thing. So I think literally, I think Houston didn't win the division until the season that Peyton was completely out of it for.
Oh, got you. Okay.
And the funny thing is that season, like it was Kerry Collins, Dan Orlovsky, and there's one more like what's his name? Curtis Painter were the quarterbacks that season when the Colts went like 2-14 before. Good
old Curtis Painter.
Oh my goodness.
Oh man, glorious. Curtis Painter. That's
what a time to think about when it comes to that.
What a time to be alive.
What a time to be a winning head coach, but still have a losing record for your franchise. What a phenomenal trivia question right there, Justin. Good stuff as always. That was a good one. That was a real brain tester because we went to expansion teams. Then there was one team that's well established there. That was a good one.
One team well established in suckitude. Yeah.
I mean, you say that, Rick. Is there ever a time for a reconciliation that happens? CM Punk and WWE. Rick and the Jets, could it happen in the future?
Well, Justin holds the official key to that. I've bestowed that upon him as the two-time loser of the pick challenge, that he holds the key to me coming back to the Jets.
Oh, that's mean.
If he chooses not to, then that's fine. But let's see if that C can part. Let's see what happens.
I mean, I think the Wheel of Chaos holds the future in that regard. But
it does, absolutely.
Justin can definitely get a say for all things considered. But once again, outstanding trivia, brother. That was very well done. Boys, let's get to the meat of the matter. And we will – it's a fun title on this one. Did the Ravens and the Lions fail America here, boys?
Yes.
Short answer is yes. We will get into the details of that specifically. But let's talk about – we've had our fun. We've had our games. Justin, once again, outstanding trivia as always, brother. That was a good one. Let us move on to the football portion, the mainly football portion of the show. Probably we'll delve into a bit of chaos and fun as we discuss these games. The AFC and NFC championship games happened this past weekend. The same weekend as other Titanic sports matchups such as Temple and East Carolina, to say the very least. I say that because I was working that game, and what a game it was. Can you sense the sarcasm dripping in my voice? Anyways, let's get to it. Just briefly, final scores of the games. The Kansas City Chiefs defeated the Baltimore Ravens in Baltimore 17-10 to win the AFC for the fourth time in the Mahomes, Kelsey, and Reed era. They're moving on to, once again, back-to-back Super Bowls. They tend to do that in Kansas City. They just go to Super Bowls back-to-back, even when you consider the franchise's early history, right, Rick? Like when they were in the first two Super Bowls when it was titled that. So this franchise just knows about at least getting their back-to-back years. So if the Chiefs are going to lose next year in the AFC title game, and then they're going to make it 2 straight years after that. So
I have to correct you on that. I think they weren't in the first 2. They were in the first one, and then I think the Raiders went Super Bowl 2. The Chiefs went back in Super Bowl 4. The Packers were in 2 consecutive ones. So if Jordan Love got there, we'd have that conversation.
There we go. Do we really need to have a conversation? No. But irregardless, the Chiefs are there once again, and facing them, it is a familiar foe indeed, but slightly different. It is the San Francisco 49ers who won a 34-31 game in Santa Clara to reclaim the NFC crown after being there for a good amount of times beforehand. After that Super Bowl loss, remember, they had that fallen season after where Jimmy G got hurt, all their guys got hurt. They make it to a couple NFC championship games the last couple of years and fall just short. And now they come back, literally and figuratively, because they came back in this game. They came back as a franchise to this point and were able to win this game and move on. So we will have the Kansas City Chiefs versus San Francisco 49ers, the Redux edition of this Super Bowl. But let's go to each individual game first here, boys, as we talk about it. Kansas City Chiefs defeated the Baltimore Ravens 17-10 in this one. A intriguing game is one way to describe it, but I think another word to describe it would be disappointing, which it really didn't feel like that after the first quarter. After the first quarter, yes, while the score was 7-7, the way that these teams were able to get their touchdowns was phenomenal. Travis Kelce on a strike from Patrick Mahomes, where the Ravens defense were actually relatively playing good at that point. They played a good game overall. Let's not discount that. The Ravens were playing good. They had good coverages, I think, for the most part, comparatively to what other teams threw at Kelce in the Dolphins and the Bills. But Kelce was just making the plays, and he made that play there to get the 20-yarder. And then that Lamar Jackson pass to Zay Flowers was something crazy, to say the very least. It tied the game. And at that point, you were like, okay, the energy has come up. We're going to start to get a shootout. We're going to have a touchdown, go back and forth in every single quarter in this one. That was not the case, however. The Chiefs would score 10 points in the second quarter on an Isaiah Pacheco finishing a drive for them, and then a Harrison Butker field goal to end the first half. And that would be the last score from them this game. The Ravens defense held the Chiefs to only 17. And boys, if you were Ravens fans and I told you the Chiefs are only going to score 17 on you, you guys are ready to go to the Super Bowl for all intents and purposes. But we'll get to that portion of the discussion here in a moment. Only one more score after that. That was a Justin Tucker kick in the fourth quarter. And that was all she wrote. It was just finished 17-10 and very, very lackluster, to say the very least. The scoring quickly dissipated at that point. Especially for the Ravens, to say the very least. So there's a number of different ways we can attack each of these games. Justin, I'll let you start the dialogue here first. Your thoughts about this AFC Championship game, the win for the Chiefs, and just the flat line of the offense for the Baltimore Ravens in this one. Because I don't think anyone in any way will argue this. The Ravens offense cost them this game.
Yeah, I mean, they really got away from what got them there, and that's the run game. I mean, you got to give credit to the Chiefs. Obviously, that they came in with a plan. Their plan worked, and it's hard to play from behind and establish the run at the same time. Chiefs came out right away. They scored. They got the goal back. They scored again. It was just they were the team in control, and you're never going to beat Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid if you let them take control of the game, unfortunately. I question where guys like Odell were. He didn't have his first catch till the fourth quarter. What the game plan offensively just didn't seem to be there. And now we're going to go into an offseason with the same kind of questions. Do they have enough at receiver? Is Lamar the issue? Is there an issue with the game planning? Is there an issue with the offensive line? Because the offensive line did not look good this week, or last week rather, against the Chiefs. Lamar was running for his life a lot of the time. And what do they have to do to get over the hump? What does anyone have to do to get over the hump? So, yeah, I mean, another year and another question. In 6 years, we've had one team beat the Chiefs, two teams, but
yeah, that's the thing. The answer to your question, Justin, is you have to have one of two quarterbacks to beat the Kansas City Chiefs, because when they don't win the Super Bowl in a season, the two quarterbacks who have been at the helm to stop them are Joe Burrow and Tom Brady. So it's like, your question is real. What can you do? And this is my thing personally, like, as I'm going to throw it to Rick here, like, for both of these games, the funny thing that I noticed, and we'll dive into it for the latter team ladder of the losers as we get to the NFC title game discussions, that I find it funny that the thing that cost the Ravens was them deviating away from what got them there. And the thing to me that cost the Lions was going too much in on the thing that got them there, not from a scheming perspective, but from a, coaching decision-making perspective. I think is the funny thing that each loser lost in two different ways, getting away from what they did and maybe doubling and tripling down too much on what they were used to doing this season, all things considered. Now I'm with you. Like you mentioned the running, like while it is tough to run while you're down, and yes, it in theory could kill clock, if you can gash and get a couple of yards, that makes it different. That opens it up to where you can get the passes going, maybe get out of bounds, stop the clock, even if the pass falls incomplete, stop. Like the Ravens were the better rushing team here. The Chiefs rushed 32 times in this one. Rick, I'll throw this one to you for the context of it. 32 rushes by the Chiefs, only 89 yards, 2.8 yards per average. The Chiefs could get nothing done on the ground for the most part. They got a couple, like 1 or 2 key first downs for the most part. But other than that, the Chiefs were not effective, and the Ravens were constantly stopping that. Meanwhile, the Ravens, like Justin said, even though they had 18 total carries, they only had 8 designed rushing plays. 8 designed rushing plays with this team, with this quarterback. And of those, and with those, I mean, I don't have the stats of just the 8 designed plays, but let's just go with the overall number. 16 carries for the Baltimore Ravens in this one, 81 yards, 5.1 yards per carry. And those stats are slightly skewed by the fact that Zay Flowers and Justice Hill each got 5 carries total for 7 yards. If you take out their 5 carries and their 7 yards, this is 11 carries for 74 yards. And that's close to 7 yards per rush. The Ravens offense, when they were choosing to run, actually looked to be gashing. But they just, like Justin said, they just went away with it for whatever their chosen reason was. That type of offensive scheming cost them the game. I don't think it's any stretch to say.
Well, there's a few other aspects of it that I think also cost them here, but you're right. I mean, this is the time when it caught up to the Ravens, not having J.K. Dobbins, not having Keaton Mitchell. When you have to rely solely on Lamar Jackson's legs, and let's be honest here, like Lamar Jackson in the pocket, when he has all that time to throw or make a decision, in this game didn't look like the MVP Lamar Jackson that he was, a couple years ago. He looked like he was – there's such a thing as too much time in the pocket, and that's what happened. Now, Justice Hill was not a non-factor in the rushing game, which I think he had been prior against the Texans. And Gus Edwards was stymied, but they had other openings. What happened was Baltimore also got away from discipline. And that field goal drive in the first half is a prime example of it, because they have the ball, 3 and out, they punted. Kansas City's at their own 11-yard line. All you need is a good defensive stop against the Chiefs, and maybe you turn field position around. It was a rough weather day in Baltimore. Tommy Townsend could shank a punt, you'd be fine. First play, Kyle Van Noy, unnecessary roughness, 15 yards. Third play, Travis Jones clotheslines Patrick Mahomes in the face. Now, great calls all around, but those 2 plays plus a short pass to Pacheco put Kansas City at the 47. So in 3 plays, they got 36 yards and then continued to go from there and just chewed up the clock. And then in the second half, when it looked like they were going to be driving down the field, let's talk about that drive. Let's talk about that drive that, started off with that huge play, Lamar to Zay Flowers down the left sideline, 54-yard pass play. And what does he do immediately after he's tackled by L'Jarius Sneed? Pushes the guy down, and it's called for taunting. The ball's at the 10, move back to the 25-yard line. And then what happens at the very end of that drive? Flowers is going for the end zone, dives, no ball security, and it's knocked out of his hands by who? L'Jarius Sneed. Karma. It's beautiful, isn't it? The Ravens were penalized 8 times in this game for 85 yards, and their offensive line also let some – they were good on the initial pressure, but once Lamar was taking 8 seconds, 9 seconds, 10 seconds to figure things out, their guard came down. That's when guys like Omenahu and Karlaftis got in the backfield for a sack or a strip sack and a fumble. Like, it is kind of rough to say the Ravens went away from their own game plan, but to be fair, this is also kind of Lamar Jackson's worst game, I think. Do you take that one touchdown pass to Flowers aside, and all everyone's going to remember is that pass to Likely in triple coverage at the very end of the game. What are you thinking with that? I think, I understand you see Likely there and he's calling for the ball, but you see 3 other guys around him who are not wearing your jersey. Think about that.
I don't necessarily agree with that though, because really Lamar's the only reason they were in that game. I mean, look, he was forcing something to happen at the end of the game and he made a mistake. Absolutely. Yeah. But at what point does that come to coaching? Because that was clearly the play design. I don't think Lamar looked up and made a decision. I think Lamar said, this is what I'm supposed to do, and did it. There was no thought behind it. I mean, and sure, maybe that's the difference between good quarterbacks and great quarterbacks. A great quarterback would have noticed the coverage and thrown it away or gone somewhere else. But you're in the fourth quarter with waning down in the AFC Championship game with a loss. And every move that they have made so far was answered by the Chiefs. Yeah. From the fumble to the stop before that, they had no answer on how to beat that Chiefs defense.
Yeah.
But that's the point I'm trying to make too, is that you have such a high-powered offense, you have such a creative offense, and I guess you're right. Yeah, the scheming was just not there, but at some points it comes down to execution. Also, just isn't correct either. Because again, what is an offensive lineman's job? To block no matter what happens, right? And so, yeah, I get it. If Lamar is standing there in the pocket trying to wait for a receiver to get open, I understand that, but you're asking Ronnie Stanley to continue to block for 8 or 9, or Linderbaum, 8 or 9 seconds to block when their normal block time from snap to pass is like 4-5 seconds max, or else Lamar is out of the pocket running. He's just standing there. It's like you're playing touch football or flag football, and the quarterback's just standing there in the pocket because the guy who's on the line, he ain't rushing. So he's literally just going to stand there, read a book, and then say, "Oh, you're open now. I'm going to throw it to you." It's like plays took too long to develop, and that's credit to the Chiefs and Steve Spagnuolo's defense for being as open as they were. But also, where was Mark Andrews? I thought he was active for this game.
He was. He got 2 catches, and that's it.
Yeah, I mean, you saw him right early in the game when they tried targeting him, but the offensive players just disappeared.
And to your guys' point, I think this is where you need to look at it from both ends, from a play calling and an execution standpoint, from where whatever Todd Monken schemed up, if he deviated away from it too quickly because of what the Chiefs were doing, I get strategizing and changing things as the game flows. But at some point, you got to get back to what your bread and butter was. And the fact that we are potentially able to sit here and say they just maybe never thought of that is a big detriment to what they did, as you guys said, what they did to get to this point. And this, again, from a coaching perspective, again, 8 designed run plays with the MVP, we assume he's going to be the MVP of the league here potentially, because I don't again, it's a regular season award. They finished the voting at latest after the wild card round. So he's probably going to get his second career MVP award, Lamar Jackson. You have the presumptive 2-time MVP here. You have, again, Gus Edwards had, in only 3 carries, he had 20 yards. I know that's a small sample size. That's pretty good for a small sample size there. They just completely deviated away from what the scheme was, and it cost them. Now, again, you can say, yes, the Chiefs defense was showing certain things early, and you do have to adjust to that. But we can then also say they didn't make the right adjustments. And then we can also say the execution, like you guys said, was poor. Where, for the mistake Zay Flowers made, I understand he made a massive mistake. 5 catches, 115 yards. He was the only guy on that team that was getting any kind of playmaking on those quarters. Shout out to L'Jarius Sneed and Trent McDuffie, by the way. Those 2 are really good as a quarter duo for Kansas City. Nobody else, everyone else disappeared on Baltimore. As much as his dad wants to say that Lamar Jackson wasn't the best with him, Odell Beckham Jr. did absolutely nothing in this game either. So, let's make that clear as well. It's from a complete thing. And Rick, I think what you pointed up, I don't want to let it fall by the wayside here before we move on to the NFC title game. The lack of discipline from the Ravens, that, as Justin said, that's a coaching thing. For all you want to say about offense versus defense, this, that, and the third, when you have that many penalties, when you have that many mistakes and lapses in judgment, that is a coaching discipline thing. And, he's made it to another championship game, so the question is not going to be loud. But I have a lot of questions for what Todd Monken did in this. Again, as an overall first season with the Ravens for him, pretty good, but that's not a way that you want to end it. And then for John Harbaugh, you've been there for a very long time. We talk about Tomlin as long as he's been there for Pittsburgh. John Harbaugh's right there, close in step with him. This is a massive game where it's a detriment to you, because how is it that your team that, for the most part, Like, the Ravens are pretty well disciplined on any given Sunday, right? Like, they don't make those boneheaded plays. How is it that your team had this many lapses in judgment? It's one of those disconnects where you need to start asking questions, and especially for this team we just talked about, again, this Ravens defense only allowed 17 points. This is, of the three defenses that the Chiefs faced, I know, first snowy game, etc., Mahomes did some things against the Bills. This was the best that any of the AFC defenses in this specific run played against Mahomes and them. Mahomes was just hyper efficient. This was like, Patrick Mahomes did not break this game over his knee. Patrick Mahomes did not win the Chiefs this game. No. This is the best possible game that the Ravens could have played defensively, except for a technical interception or whatever. But they completely screwed it up. And then if you're the Ravens, you have to think, like, I don't have the full list in front of me, but Patrick Queen, who you incessantly as an organization did not want to pay, is going to hit the open market. And I got to say, he's going to get paid. Someone is going to pay him very handsomely. Like, you're going to lose pieces on this team. And what were we talking about over the last 2 weeks? We mainly said it about the Bills, but now we can also say it about the Chiefs, about the Ravens, excuse me, not the Chiefs. No, about the Ravens. Man, you don't know when you're going to get back at this point. And even if you do get back to an AFC title game, it is no guarantee you're going to be at home for this.
Right.
For all we know, the AFC might, depending on what they do, the AFC might run through Kansas City again next year. And you're just going to think to yourself, man, if we could have won in Baltimore.
Yeah.
Like, this is a massive, massive dropping of the ball, literally and figuratively, here by the Baltimore Ravens. And this is the kind of thing that it just adds to the legacy of the Chiefs. And it is, as Justin alluded to, it has to make everyone think, in a season where we thought they were the most vulnerable, what do you have to do to beat this team? What has to be done? Well, and in theory, if you've done everything you could have done, at least defensively, you still lost. Like,
yeah, it's a nightmare scenario to think about, because, again, like you talked about it going in, that first game of the year when the Chiefs lost to the Lions and there were all those drops and all those bad plays, what did we say? The Chiefs need a better core of wide receivers. Well, Rashee Rice played phenomenally down the stretch and into the playoffs, but, everyone seemed to forget about Travis Kelce. And then in this game, you said Zay Flowers had like 115. I think Kelce had 115 or 120 receiving yards as well, because some guys scheme better against defenses like that. And look, Roquan Smith had 16 tackles. Patrick Quinn had 8, and that's great and all. But again, tackles are only good when they're stopping a guy from a first down on third down or stopping them in the backfield. Yep. If you tackle a guy 15 yards past the first down marker, congratulations, you got a tackle on your stat sheet. But it means nothing because the Chiefs, once again, got another first down, and they chewed up the clock.
That's what I was going to say. I mean, you really got to give credit to that coaching staff, because they did an excellent job at controlling the game. For an offense that we said doesn't score a ton of points, what they did was they came out, they took a quick lead, and then they controlled the rest of the game. And there was really nothing that the Ravens could do. They had excellent defense. They had great big plays when they needed to have big plays. And their best offensive player, which is the future Hall of Famer Travis Kelce, stepped up every single chance they needed him to. He was like unguardable.
Never dropped a pass. He caught every single pass that was thrown at him.
In a 60-minute game, Baltimore had possession for 22 minutes and 30 seconds. Kansas City ran the clock, and they had multiple 10-play drives, multiple drives that were over. Like, there are 2 touchdown drives in this game were 5 minutes and 45 seconds and then 9 minutes and 2 seconds.
Yep. Like, and look at the drives that they had that ended in turnovers on downs or fumbling or whatever for the Chiefs as well. 3 minutes on the one drive in the first half that ended on a turnover on downs. A punt in the second half, but that was 5 minutes chewed off the clock. And then another punt later on, 7 plays, 32 yards, but that was 4:17 off the clock.
You don't win if you don't control the clock, boys.
Yep.
You don't.
It's very hard not.
Simple as that. The Baltimore Ravens, like, in every way, shape, or form, the Ravens dropped this one. And this is the kind of loss that haunts teams and haunts franchises and haunts quarterbacks. There's a lot to stand up for going into next season if you're the Ravens, and It is on the entirety of the AFC to be like, we have to deal with them again. We have to deal with them again.
Yep.
Also, because of the new way that we're breaking down the divisions, this also just confirmed that we have to finish with the AFC West next year.
Ah, damn it.
We tried not to.
We really try, guys. We really try. And
Blame the Ravens. It's their fault.
I blame the Chiefs, too.
Nah, you know what? That's fair. That's more than fair. And, well, in the NFC, we're going to have to do the same thing yet again.
Oh!
NFC Championship game. 34-31, like I mentioned earlier, the 49ers over the Detroit Lions. Guys, first half of this game, first half is over. The Detroit Lions are up 24-7. Jahmyr Gibbs and co. have done everything. 3 rushing touchdowns in this one, in the first half. Jameson Williams, it said 42-yard run. David Montgomery finished off a drive. Jahmyr Gibbs, a 15-yarder. The Lions were in control. They were beating up the 49ers. The Niners couldn't do anything on offense. That Lions defense was a running. It looked like nothing could stop Goff and co. And then in the second half, slowly but surely, Niners get a field goal. Lions can't do anything. Niners get the lucky hit off the helmet and Brandon Ayuk catch. That is like a Super Bowl type play that happens in these games sometimes, in terms of, luck be a lady in that night for San Francisco. Brandon Ayuk finishes a drive with a touchdown. Christian McCaffrey finishes a drive with a touchdown. And the Niners tied the game. And then they score the 10 in the fourth quarter, and the Lions get their garbage time touchdown, but it wasn't enough. San Francisco, a team and a coach, we said throughout the season and in that coach's career, struggle when it comes to second half deficits. They can't come back on anyone. If they're not playing with a lead, they may not win the game. Last week, came back, or week before this, excuse me, came back, beat the Packers. This one, down 17 points at the half. Came back to win the NFC Championship. What that says to me about the San Francisco 49ers is that maybe, just maybe, this team may have finally unlocked something in itself. But we'll get to that conversation in a moment. Rick, I'll throw it to you. NFC Championship game. I think the highest scoring game of the playoffs so far, if I'm not mistaken, between these two clubs. So thank you, San Fran and Detroit. But Rick, your thoughts on the game, and then I alluded to it before with the Detroit Lions, is that, man, there are some cases where sometimes you double and triple down too much, and multiple turnover on downs in the second half with a fumble on one play. That's not great for the Detroit Lions, Rick. So what was a phenomenal season still for Detroit, let's be real here. Like it was still a phenomenal season for the franchise, ends in bitter disappointment, I think is a fair assessment to make.
Was this their one chance? The Detroit Lions? Was this their one chance? Because here's the deal. Look at the rest of the NFC. Philadelphia had a down year, and they're going to be angry next season. So they're going to be fighting for whatever. Dallas is probably going to want the chip off their shoulder to get away from the fact that they got destroyed in the 2-7 matchup. San Francisco is going to the Super Bowl, right? Green Bay is ascending. Chicago could be a better team next year, depending on what they do in the draft. The NFC South is the NFC South, whatever. But was this the one and only chance that you get as a Detroit Lions fan? Maybe. Because, look, it wasn't very good. The first half of this game was utter dominance by the Detroit Lions. They punched the Niners in the mouth like we expected them to do. The Niners didn't have an answer back. I mean, they did, but, they didn't have a full answer back. The Lions defense was just that good. And then the switch turned on in the second half. And, yes, Dan Campbell's aggressiveness came back to bite him. I understand Michael Badgley's not a good long-distance kicker. Then why is he on your team? If he can't hit from 50, he probably can't hit from 35. Why is he there? Why don't you bring in somebody who can hit from 50 or beyond for a long field goal like that? Because, look, the fourth down call, Goff, the throw, the first one to Reynolds. Josh Reynolds, you got to catch that ball, man. It's right in your hands. There's another third down play later on where he had the ball wide open and he dropped it. Like, get him off the field. I understand. The fumble, miscommunication at the line. But the problem is Jahmyr Gibbs has had fumbling problems this season. And that came back to bite him in the worst way possible. Short field, Niners score, tie game. And then again, you have a 4th down and 3 at the Niners 30 later on where you could tie the game on a field goal and you go for it. There is such a thing in gambling terms, is a thing that's called leaving while you're up. Playing it safe while you're up a big amount of money, because you never know that next spin of the roulette wheel, that next blackjack hand, you might think, oh, I'm cruising. I've won 5 games in a row. Knowing when to stop is important. Somebody get Dan Campbell the number for Harris, because he's got a gambling problem, and it showed. And again, I get it. This is what you've done all season. But time and place, man. Montgomery had a great game. Laporta had an excellent game. Amon-Ra St. Brown was good. Jameson Williams had that touchdown run that we all thought broke the game wide open in the very first. It was the big punch in the mouth we discussed it, but I don't know. This defense just – it wasn't – I don't want to say it was the defense that threw away this game, because, yes, they got torched in the second half, but the Niners offense just flipped the switch. And unfortunately – they gave us a Super Bowl that failed America. And I do have to say, before I throw it back to you, Jerg, this was also a pivotal game for us, because Jerg had the Ravens going to the Super Bowl preseason, and they lost.
Yep.
So this game was between Justin and I for which NFC team would go to the Super Bowl and which one of us would have our one team in the Super Bowl. And I know the pick challenge didn't go your way, but this is a pretty good consolation prize for you, Justin. So congratulations on actually getting a correct team in the final 2. Good on you.
I'm glad I won something.
There you go.
Look, I think that the Lions came out and they punched him in the mouth, and then they thought, well, we got our first punch and the game is over. And just it wasn't the case. I mean, for you saw the difference between a young team and an experienced team. This Niners team has been here before. They knew what they had to do to crawl back into this game, to continue to fight. And the Lions they didn't have more than one punch. And that's where their issue was. I mean, for them to have, would they score 3 points in the second half?
7, but at the very, very end.
Yeah,
I don't want to call it garbage time, but their one score in the second half was after San Fran had a 10-point lead.
Yeah, so look, it's disappointing. It's very disappointing for a team to crawl this far. And I don't care if you're going to make the excuse that's how they got there, because it's not. They got there by winning games. Yeah. All right, they didn't. It's true. And if you look at some of the games that they lost, it's because they rolled the dice one too many times. You know what I mean? I mean, look at that Dallas game. I know there's a ref controversy, and maybe they should have won that game. But after the third time, kick the extra point, go into overtime. I mean, clearly the world is telling you, cut your losses and continue to fight another day. You have to learn when it's worth continuing to fight instead of winning it outright there. It doesn't always work the way you want it to. So, I mean, this is a good team. Their core is still going to be there next year. The coaching is still fairly good coaching. I think Dan Campbell probably learned a lot from this experience. And I expect them to be in position again next year. They are a very good football team, and they're going to be a very good football team at least next year. We'll see what happens when they have to start re-signing players that they drafted, because they've drafted very well, and they're going to owe a lot of guys a lot of money, and they're probably going to have to make some very tough decisions coming up.
And no, to your point, Justin, you talk about owing guys money. You know who's now entering a contract year, because correct me if I'm wrong, boys, I don't know if he was a first-round pick. He may have been a second or third rounder. Amon-Ra St. Brown is going to be the first of these names that's due money.
I think he was like a fourth or fifth rounder, wasn't he?
So no fifth-year option. You're gonna have to make that decision very soon.
That's what I wanted to bring up to you as well. I understand what you're saying, Justin, and you're right. I mean, they do have good pieces that are coming back, but the problem is that if you looked at their free agent class going into this offseason, all the names that are there, they're either like considerable role players, or in some cases, they're big names. Gardner Johnson is a free agent after this season. Romeo Okwara, Emmanuel Mosley, like 4 of their guards, Glasgow, Jackson, Skipper, Jalen Reeves-Maybin, their long snapper, Jake McQuaid, Kendall Vildor is also there. Brock Wright's restricted. Peoples-Jones, who they brought in from the Browns. Khalil Dorsey. The problem is that you're right. There are guys that are on this team that are probably going to be gone because you have those big-time contracts like Goff and Amon-Ra St. Brown. And again, for all that, the reason why I said, was this their last chance? You've got 4 guys who you drafted this year who played like studs. Gibbs, Laporta, Campbell, and Brian Branch. And so come year 4, are you going to have all of those guys on your team? That's what I said. This was, as constructed, this was the best Detroit Lions team as constructed. And I hate to say that, with Barry Sanders being in the house because, he's the best Lions player we've ever seen play. But look, this was your one shot. Your one shot because, like Jerg said, the rest of the AFC is gunning for Kansas City. The NFC this year was wide open because of Philadelphia's problems. And yes, San Francisco, I get it. They were there last year too, but you had a golden opportunity to steal one. The heist of the century, if you will, if the Lions got there and won the Super Bowl by beating the Chiefs for a second time. And sorry, but like 8 Mile, it's a long, quiet, dark road now. And I worry. I worry the Lions might not get back there.
And it's one of these questions to wonder because we're not saying this, to be mean to the people that are watching this. And if Detroit Lions fans watch this isn't us being mean. This isn't us being overly critical. This is just a fact. It's never a guarantee that a team is going to get back to a high point, if you will, of just calling it that. And if you don't believe me, what have the Carolina Panthers done since that Super Bowl loss?
Arizona Cardinals.
Atlanta Falcons.
Tennessee Titans.
Yeah. These teams, they get the Jacksonville Jaguars, I think, as well. They had that AFC Championship game. And I think that's the definition of a game where the coach, the team, the scheme blew it because they had that lead. They were scared to let their quarterback try to do anything else aside from handoffs, and they lost that game. And what happened to the Jags ever since then? It's one of these things where you get somewhere and it's just nowhere near a guarantee you're going to get back. And if you're the Lions, for next season, you're going to retain a good amount of this talent. You're still going to have Amon-Ra St. Brown. You're still going to have Sam Laporta. You're still going to have Gibbs and Montgomery because they signed Montgomery for 3 years. So, you're still going to have that. Jared Goff, I believe, is still there. But then it's management is not thinking about 2024 right now. The 2024 roster, barring someone holding out, is for the most part set. They just need to fill in pieces, right? It's the 2025 team that they need to really plan ahead for. Yes, they're doing their due diligence. They're going to do well in the draft. I'm not saying they're ignoring for 2024. But you need to have in the back of your mind everything we've mentioned. Amon-Ra St. Brown is due money. Jared Goff at some point is going to be due a reworked contract. And if QBs are any indication, not all of them have the presence of mind to realize the amazing situation that they're in and to take a significant amount less. These guys know they can't be paid more than. I'm sorry, I know he had the great season, all due respect. Jared Goff shouldn't be touching the $250 million that Burrow and Herbert have signed for, none of these quarterbacks are going to get the $500,000 that Mahomes is signed for and then restructured for yet again. We know that there's the echelon, but then there's the part underneath that. And then once you re-up them, what happens to the rest of the team? And some of these squads that we just mentioned here as one-off appearances, what did some of them do? They paid their quarterback and they paid dearly for it. Because in some cases, their quarterback wasn't as good as we thought. Or I think, and this would be more comparative to Detroit, Jared Goff is good, but if you start to lose pieces around him, it's not going to be as easy for him or at all. Justin mentioned this, I definitely think it's worth noting. Dan Campbell coming back for year 4, I think this was a massive learning experience for him as a coach to get here. This is the farthest he's ever gotten as a coach, as head coach of a team. So this is big for him. Bringing back their 2 coordinators as well. Johnson and Aaron Glenn, who both were, in conversations a little bit here and there. Now the 2 of them are coming back, showing real loyalty to this team. You almost have to think there might be a window there on winning with these coaches, because I think a year from now, Johnson, if Detroit's looking good again next season, he's probably out of there. He's probably out of Detroit and taking his first head coaching opportunity.
Yeah, Johnson's definitely gone. But look, Aaron Glenn, the Lions lived and died the past 2 years by a high-octane offense that also allowed a considerable amount of points on defense and yards on defense. remember what we said? What I said after the first game. What was my concern with the Lions after they beat the Rams? How many yards did they allow? And it just continued. And that kind of shows you a little bit where, like I said, a bunch of those guys that were free agents are defense guys or secondary guys. Now, some of them aren't very good names. Vildor, Reeves Maben, but Gardner Johnson was supposed to be he's only 25.
Yeah.
Like, he should be long-term guy.
Remember, they got him just on a one-year deal because I guess he didn't like the market as is. It's not a guarantee he's coming back. He did the typical 1 year, go for good money in 1 year and then re-up for a longer-term contract next year. That doesn't mean that contract's with you. Like, there were a number of teams that were interested in him last year, and I know stats-wise he may not have put up the same season like he did in Philly. I promise you someone's going to pay him 40, 50 mil guaranteed as a top safety/corner. It's going to happen.
This also, I think, was a golden opportunity wasted for Jared Goff because, look, is he a great quarterback? No. We're not going to stand here and say that Jared Goff is a top 5, top 4 quarterback, top 6 quarterback in this league. But I consistently beat this drum of he is a top 10 very good quarterback in this league. And you know what would have really helped this case? Getting back to another Super Bowl. Because the first one was such a disaster because the Rams only scored 3 points. It was like Goff didn't even show up for the game. If you give him a second chance at Super Bowl, maybe he has some magic in there. Maybe he proves it. Like, again, I hate to use this comparison, but it's a good one. Take away the Super Bowl rings. Take away the playoff performances. Is Eli Manning a good quarterback in this league? Is he a great quarterback in this league? Is good. Is he great? No. When you add on those Super Bowls and the lore that's there, Eli Manning becomes a Hall of Fame caliber quarterback. Jared Goff, the window's closing on him too because, again, he's got great stats, but nothing to show for it. He's been saddled with bad teams, and when he gets in good positions, he's let down. He had a good game, but those drops, those fumbles, those play calls, that's the difference between a good team and a great team going to a Super Bowl, and that's what we have here. We have, as much as I hate this game, we have 2 great teams that are going to the Super Bowl next week.
Yep, and we're going to save all the detail of these 2 teams in particular next week, obviously, because we have a full week, a full week to marinate on it more. I'm very interested to see what our Super Bowl picks are going to be for next week, to say the very least, to end the show. But you have 2 great teams that are going back to the Super Bowl on both sides. You have the defending champions coming back. Now, the Kansas City Chiefs, we always say it's hard to get back there. There are just some teams that know how to buck that trend and are trending towards the dynasty. The Kansas City Chiefs have an option, have the ability to make a modern NFL dynasty here. They would be the first repeat champions that the league has seen since the New England Patriots from the early 2000s. And then with the win here, this would be, their 3rd Super Bowl in 5 years, if I'm not mistaken, boys? 3rd in 5 years. That's dynasty type. When you include the repeat in there, the sports have this. I've gone with Googling this for myself. All the major sports are just in general, there is an actual definition to what you can consider a run for a team as a dynasty. This right here is on the precipice of being officially cladded as a dynasty. Not a maybe dynasty, not a great force, as some people have called other teams in other sports. No, legitimate A1 ancient history dynasty right here for the Kansas City Chiefs they have a chance for. So that's on one side. On the other side is the ultimate redemption for the San Francisco 49ers, because this is the same team that beat them a few years ago. And by the way, let's just talk about the real reason. Well, the 2 reasons why the Ravens and the Lions have failed America. We had a global pandemic after the Super Bowl last time. So what disease are we going to get this time?
I'm just saying. Like, when I realized that, I went out and bought more masks and more hand sanitizer and more Clorox wipes.
Did you get toilet paper? Because that was apparently big the last time for.
I raided the toilet paper. Yeah, people looked at me like I was crazy, but you know what? I said, "Look who's playing in the Super Bowl, guys! Look at the history.
Prep in advance
here." And this is why I'm in my palatial estate now, because ain't nobody getting through these penetrable walls.
Oh man,
Purge all over again.
Oh man, it's going to be something, but they failed us there. And then the Ravens, I'm not going to be happy with the 15 camera cuts to the suites for the Chiefs every single time. I'm telling you, every single catch, every single catch, you know who the camera's going to go to.
Not for nothing, but Olivia Culpo's also going to be there. Cut to her once in a while.
Yeah.
You know, even though she shelled out $2 million for a suite for her for her future mother-in-law's birthday. But I could rant on that because why are suites $2 million for a suite? Are you kidding me?
That's expensive, ain't it? So we're going to talk about the details of the game in and of itself next week when we talk about the strengths of these teams, how they've gotten here, looking at their rosters up to down. Because as Rick said, we might be annoyed by it. We're going to be frustrated with the directing and the producing of this game in terms of where the camera is going to go from time to time. But if there's one thing that we can definitively say, in the AFC, this is the team that's run this conference for the last 6+ years. And it looks like they still have that stranglehold for yet another year going into 2024. In the NFC, this is top to bottom when they're fully healthy. And this, let's give credit here. The Niners finally made do on what they said was the case the last few years, that their team fully healthy could consistently go to the Super Bowl. And they proved that this year. This is the healthiest this team has been at the end of a season in years. And they finally made it back. So they get to be able to say, like their statement last year, if Brock Purdy was healthy, they win that title game last year. There's a lot more credence to that, considering they came back healthy. They won it again. Now, Dre Greenlaw did get hurt, so that's going to be something to watch out for. And Deebo Samuel, a little bit banged up, but dude, 8 catches, 89 yards. He's looking pretty good. But in essence, again, full breakdown next week. I don't want to get too far ahead of it. This is going to be a rematch from years ago, but both of these teams are very different from what they were years ago. And our analysis next week, I can't wait for that. I can't wait to get through the next week, mainly because of what my work schedule is like, but especially for us to be able to talk about this game, because this is going to be a fun one to break down.
I'm gonna say it through gritted teeth that this will be a fun matchup for us to break down. I almost threw up in my mouth a little bit there because why is it the Chiefs and the Niners again? Like why do the football gods hate us so much? Why can't they give us anything fun? But yeah, I mean, all I know is once that game is over, we spin the wheel of chaos once again and find out who my new team's gonna be. So
because after 1 year with the Bears, you're soured.
Well, I'm not sour per se, but let me say what it is here. I'm holding the Bears as hostage right now. If you are to trade Justin Fields because you want to draft Caleb Williams number 1, then yes, I sour on you immediately. Because what do I always say? What do you always say?
Oh,
Alabama or USC, but not Ohio State so much anymore. Ohio State's okay.
They've redeemed themselves. CJ Stroud has really pulled up things for Rick.
He has. Yes, he has. Rookie of the year. I'll take it. Alabama and USC, never draft him in the first round, especially a quarterback, because you know what happens. And incidentally, yes, no Alabama draft pick has scored in the Super Bowl. Jalen Hurts graduated from Oklahoma, guys.
Yep.
Nice try.
So that is a crazy stat with all the talent Nick Saban has put out. But it is worth noting that now that it is official, I'm very happy about that. We will I'll say a few weeks' time. Maybe we could do this after the Super Bowl or 2 weeks after the Super Bowl. We'll have some build up to it. We will once again do the spinning of the wheel spin of chaos yet again on the wheel of chaos. Who will Rick's team be going into next season? And hey, it could still be the Bears, ladies and gentlemen, because the way we did it last year will be the same way we do next year. We're just going to bring in the final 8 teams. Myself individually, I will be doing a wheel spin based off of a bracket that Rick gives me, and I share the results to the guys here. And from there, we will get down to the final 8, which we will do live on the show to finish off an episode here in the coming weeks. Again, one of the post-Super Bowl episodes. We're going to do we actually planned something ahead, ladies and gentlemen. I know, crazy for this podcast. We will do at least 1 or 2 Super Bowl episodes, or post-Super Bowl episodes, maybe 3, depending on how schedules in the calendar go off. And then we're going to take a couple weeks off to A, for ourselves, and B, to then reset on what is going to be a very intriguing NFL offseason for us to really dive into and what could happen. Teams are going to lose guys. Teams are going to gain new players, of course, working up to the 3rd edition of the Sports Agents of Chaos 3-round mock draft. At least we assume it's going to be 3 rounds again. We're going to have to double-check that once the season's over.
We also need to kind of take a couple weeks off to let Justin kind of begin his story arc of rising back to the top and trying his hardest before a bigger star comes in and pushes him out of the way.
Justin and Cody Rhodes are the Spider-Man meme of not being allowed to finish their story by people.
Absolutely. Oh,
Because last year I was the Roman to his Cody, and now this year you're the Rock to his Cody.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just disappointing for.
And next year when Okada comes into WWE, somebody else is going to come in. The mascot will beat Justin in the finals. Whoever the mascot is.
Whoever the mascot is. Oh goodness. Side note, real quick: if Okada doesn't go to WWE, he's just an idiot. I'm just saying that right now.
Agreed.
Just don't waste your time in All Friends Wrestling. But that being said, the future WWE, future wrestling episode down the line,
Wrestling Agents of Chaos,
Wrestling Agents of Chaos, just all these offshoots that probably will never come to fruition. Anyways, guys, it's been a couple weeks. It's time for the return of a staple. We all know it. We all love it. It's been too long. And it's time for our good old friend to come back. Rick, rant for the people.
You know, one of my resolutions in 2024 was to try and, find the good in the world and find the good in people and the good in our lives. And then the last week happened. And so I decided, screw all that. Let's rant on some stuff. So I have an honorable mention here because I'm getting back into shape, or trying to at least. Whatever shape it is, I don't know, but I'm trying to get back into shape. And I was doing a road run, and I heard a song called That's the Joint by Funky 4+1. It's like an old school hip-hop track. When I tell you this track took about 10 to 15 minutes out of my life, like for a hip-hop song, because all 5 of them, the Funky 4 plus the 1, had to have their own 2-minute rap break, plus bouncing around music. And by the way, Kids Bop, lesson for you. Listen to that song because that's how you do clean rap. You see that? You ever seen that Family Guy cutaway clip where it's like Will Smith doing family-friendly rap? That was this song. And it was like, where's the nearest lake I could go run into? Because I need to listen to something else, please. So that's the honorable mention. Funky 4+1. If you want to listen to the song and kill 25 minutes out of your day, be my guest. But don't tell them that I sent you because you get nothing from it. Number 3. Kevin Durant, a longtime staple on this show, got the tribute video treatment in Brooklyn when the Suns went to play the Nets, and he was asked if he thought he was successful here. And being the arrogant, pompous ass that he is, Kevin Durant said, well, look at my stats. 50, 40, 90. I did this. I did that. I did that. Did you win a championship? Did you win an NBA title? Did you win more than one playoff series, Kevin Durant? No, you didn't. You know who you are? You're as overrated as Adam Rank and Kyrie Irving. Like, stop. You were not successful in Brooklyn because you didn't win a damn thing. You didn't win anything. You never won any hearts. You didn't win any Junior's cheesecake. You didn't go to Coney Island and win over the Cyclone. No, you won nothing. So you were not successful. I hate jaded delusion among people, And that's where this whole theme of this rant is going. Jaded delusion. Number 2, you hipsters out there and you yuppies out there that are trying to tell me that avocado toast is delicious. Like, why would I subject myself to buttering my bread with Nickelodeon slime in the morning and calling it a day? First of all, what am I going to do? Get guacamole? Because otherwise I have to pick my own avocado and then make it myself and smear it? No. Like, why? Who is this for? Who is this for? Like, what random yokel who has got long hair named Shazik on a bike is, driving around, going to yoga, and has to have avocado toast in the morning? And by the way, if you think that's a culturally inappropriate name, my Shazik is a 30-year-old guy working at WeWork. He's got the long dreads, the white, the white cap, the white shirt. And he thinks he's all, woke and all of that. Like, I'm not really about that. Number 1 on my rant podium list. I didn't think this was going to be number 1, but we're here. And this is where I have to get back to my roots, because I'm going to lose a very significant portion of this fan base to make somebody very, very angry. Swifties. Now, I have to give credit where credit is due here. Holderness Family Laughs on YouTube put out a short making fun of the numerology of the Super Bowl because it's Super Bowl 58. 5 plus 8 equals 13. That was a Taylor Swift album. The 49ers are in it. 4 plus 9 equals 13. Taylor Swift album. Taylor Swift's been to 12 games this year so far with the Chiefs. This will be number 13 in the Super Bowl. Taylor Swift album. There's more. There's more. I'm getting there. Stay with me. The games between the 1 seed and the 3 seed. 13. Album. She's going to be in Tokyo for the concert the day before the game, which is on February 11th. 2 plus 11. 13. Album. The flight from Tokyo to Las Vegas nonstop. 13 hours. Yep. If you're not 100% sure if she's going to be there, 100 minus 13. 87. Travis Kelce's number. And for more, this is Travis Kelce's 22nd playoff game. 22. Taylor Swift song. Ladies and gentlemen, what I'm saying is that the script has already been written. We know how it's going to end. Kansas City is going to win the Super Bowl next week. Pat Mahomes is going to say he's going to go to Disney World. Travis Kelce is going to propose to Taylor Swift on the field at the end of the game, like Ian Johnson did all those years ago with Boise State. And this is the world we're going to have to live in. And if that's the world we're going to have to live in, then maybe I do want another pandemic to hit the world. I'm going to call back something that I said many, many weeks ago. Thanos had a point. Thank you.
Man. Dude, actually, wait, Justin, did you see, by the way, like the Japanese embassy, or like I forget what their official name is, like put out a letter saying that trying to basically ensure all fans that they can get Taylor Swift to the game on time and that it won't affect like her tour over in Japan. You didn't see that?
With song titles of Taylor Swift in the actual letter itself.
Oh my God.
Yeah, it's.
Oh, listen, I have any one of my friends that isn't a big football fan, but like I had someone ask, like, did Taylor's team win? Is she going to the Super Bowl?
I'm wishing that the coconut shrimp that I'm gonna have is like laced with like anthrax next week. Because if I have to deal with this for one more week,
You're a father now.
All right, fine. Horse laxative, but still, either way.
Hey.
I think Rick is actually looking for a time machine to go down the Alaska timeline at this point.
Don't put that energy in the world, Rick.
Yeah, seriously.
Well, I mean, listen, it's cheddar bay biscuit breaded coconut shrimp, so I mean that's pretty decent. Hey, listen.
So you're saying you'll have a
I'll give them
way to go.
I will give them this pub. Red Lobster did the right thing by making frozen fish entrees because they have cheddar bay biscuit breaded cod. They have the coconut shrimp now with the biscuit breading. And they have like garlic parm shrimp, like stuffed cheese bites. That's the only way I'll go to Red Lobster now because I can't go to Red Lobster ever again for reasons.
There's clearly apparently for fear of poisoning at this general.
No, actually, here's the funny story about that. The last time that I went to Red Lobster, they didn't have lettuce for a Caesar salad. They ran out of lettuce.
Really?
Yeah.
I don't think I've ever heard a restaurant run
right.
I feel like that should be impossible.
I mean, if there's like a recall, I understand that, but that's why there's like 25 different types of lettuce. I think I don't know how many types there are. That'll be another show episode for another day.
Yeah,
not here.
Another segment for another day where we go on the machinations of how many different types of lettuce there are on this way. Well, what a way to have a post rostrum podium, to say the very least. What an end to this episode, ladies and gentlemen, because that is all for this one. Thank you so much for joining us. Yes, pretty quick episode compared to what we normally do at times, but like we said, next week is the big episode. We're going to break down both teams for the Super Bowl. Thank you, Eugene, Mr. Krabs. But next week we're going to break down both teams, the Chiefs, the 49ers. We're going to go into the matchup. We're going to give our predictions. I got to say, even compared to the last few years, this might be the hardest Super Bowl prediction for myself since the last Chiefs-Niners Super Bowl, actually. So there that one is. We're going to have that. We're going to make our predictions next week. We're going to talk about, now that all the coaches have been hired, we know that the final hirings were made over the last couple of days, guys. We wanted to save that all. We're going to go break down all the new full coaching hires, give our quick thoughts analysis. Maybe we're going to decide what we want to do. Are we going to grade, rank in particular? We'll figure that out next week. But coaches and superb owl talk next week as we reach the end of the 2023-2024 season. And we're so very much thank you for all so very much thankful that all of you have joined us on the road so far to the Sports Agents of Chaos, inching ever so closer to the milestones of the show, the 100th episode, the next mock draft, the next season that we do this thing. Oh man, what a time it's been. We don't know how much longer this ride is going to go, but we're going to go on it for as long as we can. So, thank you all so much for joining us on another edition filled with fun, football, and chaos. We'll see you all back here once again next week.